All right, so here we go. Hey, welcome to Still Rolling BJJ's podcast. This is actually episode 1. I've got maybe my favorite training partner, Phil Grimes. He's joining me today. He's my guinea pig, but he's got a fantastic story regardless, so he's well worth being the first guest. So, Phil, the perpetual nail Grimes, even though I do like other nicknames you have, specifically the Grape Ape. Phil is he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt under Professor Sean Chitwood. He's been grinding on the mats since about 2018, known for his resilience and humor at the face of adversity, hence his nickname. Phil's competed in multiple tournaments and trains whenever he can, living on the road as a full-time RVer. His nomadic lifestyle lets him roll with different academies across the country, soaking up knowledge and community at every stop. Recently, he's been sidelined. He was in a motorcycle accident, and so he's still trying to find ways to stay connected to the group. He's laughing through some of the pain, I suppose, and he's plotting to make his comeback, one wrist lock at a time. So welcome, Phil. I appreciate you coming on here and being my guest. Yeah. So
Thank
we'll
you.
just start. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say thanks for having me. It feels weird, being kind of a nobody, just an average old guy rolling hobbyist. It feels kind of strange being the first guest on a podcast, especially when knowing you and getting to see some of the folks who will be following. It's kind of an honor. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to do it.
Yeah, I think maybe the point in this podcast is I want regular people. I want obviously the big time guys too, but I want to interview all ranks and all perspectives. I think sometimes when you have these more popular or more established folks, or obviously your black belts, it is a jiu-jitsu podcast after all. Sometimes maybe some perspective gets lost. I will probably even enter a white belt or two here and there, just because I do think that they may have some different perspective on things. So we'll start. You've done multiple martial arts. It's not just jiu-jitsu for you. So where did you start your martial arts journey, and how has that helped shape your life?
Well, I've actually, excuse me, I've actually been training since I was 6 or 7 when I started Taekwondo and worked my way up. I actually have a second degree black belt in Taekwondo. And I've also trained American Kempo, Aikido, a little bit of Judo, not really enough to really, I mean, don't remember any of it, obviously. You can tell through my Jiu-Jitsu. But yeah, a little bit, every opportunity that I've had to kind of dip my toes into another style, I have taken that opportunity just because it is the one physical activity that I can have stuck with through life. I don't really like ball sports and such, so to speak. I'm not a football guy. I'm too clumsy for basketball. And martial arts is really, I hate lifting weights, but martial arts is really the one thing that kind of calls me back. So that's where I kind of got started, and it's been an addiction. It's something that the discipline that I've gotten from martial arts, the respect that I've gotten for myself and learned how to respect and engage with others, and the friendships that I've built. I mean, I still have friends from my Taekwondo days back in the 80s, and these are lifelong friends, and then, up to today. I've been training jiu-jitsu since 2018, pretty consistently, even through my travels. I've had some time off here and there when I can't find an academy to roll with while I'm on the road, but meeting you, and that has kind of built some friendships. We have a kind of a crew of friends now, and it's found a community. And that is really kind of what keeps me going at this point as an older guy on the mat.
Yeah, I agree. I think the community is a piece that keeps people interested in jiu-jitsu. For me, it's a military thing. I say it often that I think my military friends, or the friends that I'm making in jiu-jitsu, are the most similar to my military friends. How do your jiu-jitsu buddies compare with the friends that you've got off the mats?
Very similar, honestly. I one of the things that I've found with, I think, jujitsu, as with most things in life, there tends to be cliques, right? People of like mind stick together. And those of us who are training, again, regularly, those that, if I see you in the gym 3 or 4 times a week, you're probably somebody that I'm going to get to know to some degree. right? And we find those people with common mindsets. You know, you and I, again, haven't gotten to know each other over the years. We have several things in common that we enjoy doing that's not just jiu-jitsu, you know. So that is interesting because they translates the same. Like, you would mix well with the other friends that I have. The one thing that I will say to that, though, is the biggest difference, and I guess one of the things that I appreciate most about my jiu-jitsu friends, is I see them more often, right? Like, we all get busy and life, it gets in the way and things happen and we have priorities, and okay, fine, I'm a grown man. I'm not going to cry that my buddy can't come outside and ride bikes with me. But I see my jiu-jitsu friends, again, at least usually once a week, at least once a week. When I'm really trying to train heavy, we're in that 3-4 times a week. And I mean, I see you more than sometimes my family, or I mean, I work remotely, so I see you more than I see my coworkers and such. So that's really where that's at.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, you alluded to it. You ride motorcycles. You live full time in an RV, so you have already kind of that nomadic style lift, you know, and obviously motorcyclists and people that are in riding groups and clubs, you know, that's a total lifestyle, and you've done this across the country. What's inspired that lifestyle for you, and where did it begin?
At a very early age, I've suffered from wanderlust really as long as I can remember. You know, I like to travel, loved vacations, and I didn't get to do that very much as a kid. But we did move around a lot, and so, you know, I never really felt like I set down roots. I went to 5 different elementary schools. I know not nearly as many as you. You feel my pain with the moving around a lot, and I never really kind of put down roots anywhere. And so when I started to become a young man and I started to get the taste of independence, you know, I had friends that started driving before me, and we'd be out late riding around, joyriding, cruising. You know, we're talking in the mid to early 90s when a $20 tank of gas will last you, you know, definitely a few days at the time. And so I got a little bit of taste of freedom. And actually on my 16th birthday, I called out of school. My mom took me to the DMV. I got my driver's license on my birthday. And I've been traveling and enjoying the road ever since. I actually had a date that night. I was so confident I was going to get my driver's license. I had a date planned that night, so went and picked the girl up with my fresh license in my 1988 Dodge Colt, and really just thought I was hot shit at the time, you know. So that's kind of the start of my love for just kind of traveling and exploring. And I would be out joyriding, hanging out with my buddies, going out to the movies and such. And eventually, you know, I was a little bit of a rowdy kid. I got in a lot of trouble, did a lot of things that I really wasn't supposed to do, a lot of things I'm not very proud of. That part of that was, there were periods where I would just disappear. I would pick up and be gone for, you know, 3 months at a time, or the worst was 18 months. I just pick up, disappeared, and went and lived in San Antonio, Texas for a year and a half, and didn't tell my mom, right? Didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew where to find me. My family, for all intent and purposes. I spent my 20th birthday, so that would have been the year two. I spent the New Year's of 2000, the spring of 2000, and then I was back around the Midwest in the summer of 21, or of 20, sorry, 2000, while my 20th year. Oh, yeah, I was 19, 20 years old, running around San Antonio, Texas. My family had no idea where I was, right? And that was not uncommon for me. In fact, so my dad co-signed for me on a 1997 Ford Ranger that I was driving at the time, and pretty much went and pawned everything that I had. Went and left my pickup truck in the parking lot of a Meijer, thinking that, you know, I'm going to stop making the payments on it. They're going to come and repo it. So I just left it sitting in this Meijer parking lot, and hopped in my buddy's car, and we drove through the night from Columbus, Ohio to San Antonio, Texas. And it was just one of the wildest periods of my life. I mean, I have incredible stories from that time, but, you know, that wanderlust just never went away. I love the excitement of the road. I love the adventure of all the things that can happen, both when you're traveling with someone. There's nothing like a road trip with a buddy, or I can tell you stories about packs of bikes as far as your eye can see. Mm-hmm. But there's also that spiritual connection of, you know, traveling alone. That's actually what happened on my motorcycle accident. I was on the road and kind of on a little bit of a road trip and enjoying all of that. That's a spiritual thing for me. So wanderlust is really what inspired the lifestyle. I love adventure. I love to see what's next. And now that I'm an adult and I make big boy money, I have the ability to tow my house behind me in my pickup truck with my motorcycle loaded and go and see whatever I really want to see. So I went and spent a summer in the Grand Tetons. I spent some time in the Black Hills. I've spent some time in the Appalachian Mountains. I've spent some time, really at this point, there's not much of the country that I haven't gotten to spend pretty extensive period of time, both just exploring the local culture and exploring the roads. And I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, we definitely identify as far as being kind of Rolling Stones and having been around the country and moved a lot. But you also
Well,
talked about your motorcycle.
before you move on to that, I want to say just one thing that you asked about how my jujitsu friends identify with my friends outside. This is just another example of that, right? Like, I remember
Right.
going into jujitsu being super nervous, not knowing anybody. You were actually my very first training partner, and that ended up being like, you know, you're showing me how not to die in those first few weeks, kind of taking it easy on me, to eventually, like, we get to know a little bit about each other, and that common bond just gets exposed, and it's such an intimate sport. We're never like this in taekwondo. I'm never going to be face to face with somebody when I'm
Right.
in karate, right? Or even boxing, or you might get the Thai clinch in kickboxing or something, but you're not going to be face to face while you're drilling with somebody and like actually talking about, oh hey, how's your wife, kind of thing. So yeah,
Yeah,
bonds.
I talk about that actually kind of regularly. How outside of an intimate relationship, I can't think of another place in life that I would ever be as close to another human being by choice than I do on the jujitsu mats. And there's nights where you're rolling with five, six, seven different people and over and over again, sweating all over each other and everything. There's you can't help but have a community built into that. It's yeah, it's I can't think of anything else like it. Now, you mentioned that you were in a motorcycle accident. Obviously, I know you were in a motorcycle accident. We've hung out while you've been on crutches and laid up, and obviously you can't train right now. How's your recent accident changed your perspective on riding, and how is it shifting how you see risk? And this would apply to both, on the road, but also on the mat. A big part of what I'm going to be talking about in this podcast as we keep going is I want to know about people that have had to take breaks from training, and then what that looks like when you're on the road back, and then eventually coming back and getting on the mats.
Yeah, so I was in a motorcycle accident after 23 years in the saddle. My first motorcycle accident, my first accident ever, even after 29 years of driving. So I consider myself pretty lucky. And as bad a situation as that was, everybody hears motorcycle accident and tends to think the worst. I was incredibly lucky. I actually walked away. I walked myself onto the ambulance and was, I was incredibly lucky to. Really, the only damage was a broken ankle, and I'm about halfway through my recovery right now. That's hard. It's, we're talking 3 months roughly in terms of the recovery, and that's just before I'm going to be allowed to be back on the mats drilling. It's probably a year plus before I can really do anything, before I would do anything, especially like a tournament. I'm not doing much stand up probably for a year now at this point, just because I have new parts. I'm not for original factory parts anymore. I've got pins and a plate and screws in me now, and I have to learn how to work all that stuff. And quite frankly, now that I'm a blue belt, that Southside game starts popping up, and that stuff is terrifying. When it's scary enough when you don't know what you're doing, but throw in the fact that I'm injured, that definitely adds a little more concern in terms of the risk tolerance. I will tell you, I went and met the orthopedic doctor 2 weeks after my surgery, and my first question to him was, when can I get back on the mat and when can I get back on my bike? And he kind of just shook his head and laughed and gave me this 3 month timeline and told me what to expect. And I said, okay, great. And that is, I'm really trying to stick to that. Like, I hate the limitation. It takes so much away from me to not be able to ride, to not be able to train. I miss my friends. I miss the exercise. I miss being able to take a shower without it seeming like a full body workout. But
Yeah.
in terms of the risk tolerance and such, I mean, it really hasn't changed me too much because I am ready to jump right back on the saddle. And I think, honestly, that there are only so many ways of looking at that. I have considered myself to have the warrior mentality my whole life, and this is the first real tragedy that I've suffered personally. I've been around a lot of motorcycle accidents, never in one myself. I've responded to, I've been the first person on car accidents and been involved in helping people that have been shot and stabbed. I've been in some emergency situations, but never, I mean, heck, I've only had, aside from this accident, I've only had stitches, when I got myself fixed. And I had a couple of lipomas removed at some point. So very minor, superficial stuff. Never had a surgery. So it hasn't really slowed me down. In fact, like you said in the introduction, I'm plotting my way back. I cannot wait to get back on the bike. I cannot wait. In fact, one of our buddies is picking me up here after we're done with this podcast so I can go and watch class and, socialize and make sure that the folks at the gym haven't forgotten about me. So it hasn't slowed me down one bit.
That's awesome. A lot of times you'll see guys that are banged up and they still come to class, even if they're just kind of watching and they can't move, obviously. I think it's a testament to, I don't know of other gyms where, like, if you were in a lifting group and you were broken and couldn't lift at all, are you still going to the gym? Or are you still showing up just to watch your other guys lift? I could be wrong. Maybe they do. I don't spend a lot of time in a traditional gym. I have other ways that I work out, but I don't think I would be going to those things if I was broken.
I sure wouldn't. I know I wouldn't.
Yeah.
That seems a little weird to be like going to the gym and like scoping dudes out while they're lifting. You might get a little
you might get some funny looks. Well, and that's the thing is, like, I see the gym and traditional lifting as more of a chore than the hobby I enjoy. And I know that obviously weightlifting is huge. There's a lot of people that is their sanctuary. That's my perspective from where I sit, and I know that that's not everybody's. So you've got another side project called the Unbound Nomad. What is that? And are you putting more energy into that now that you're kind of stuck in a chair?
This is my escape. So I have my sights set on retirement. I've been a computer geek for way too long, and I am ready for something different. And as I start to look down the barrel of retirement, I said to myself, what do we want to do? Like, you don't have the personality to just sit on the couch and watch TV. You're not a housewife to sit and eat bonbons and soap operas all day. Like, what are we going to do? You're going to get bored, and bored me is a dangerous thing. So, the idea of the Unbound Nomad came about from really just the fact that I want to make a business off of my motorcycle. I want to find a way to sustain a living doing something that I really love. And it's a little dangerous, I realize, because I used to love my current job, was my passion until I did it for 25 years. I don't plan on doing this for 25 years. It's something that's going to be, a fun gig. It's going to give me a decade or so of pleasure as I start to become an old man. As I continue becoming an old man, you can see the gray in my beard. But the
There's going to be a lot of gray beards on this podcast.
Yeah, the Old Men podcast. I dig it. The Unbound Nomad, the general idea is, think about if you've ever been on an all-inclusive cruise, right? You pay the price, you show up, you enjoy all the amenities, you have a fun time, you don't have anything to worry about, and then you get to go home back to your normal life. Well, this is that, but on motorcycles. And the general idea here is, if this is for anybody, experienced riders who don't know how to play the logistics of a ride, or even old school bikers who just really don't want to deal with the hassle of scheduling, hotel trips and figuring out gas stops and how far can we go on the tank for everybody who's going to be riding or something along those lines. And so it's an all-inclusive type package for bikers, to where if you want to go, Sturgis Motorcycle Rally is happening right now. It's breaking my heart that I'm not in South Dakota at the moment, but that's one of my prime targets, right? So folks that want to go and attend these big motorcycle rallies, but maybe they don't know how to plan the trip to get there. They want to ride from wherever they may be, Ohio or the East Coast or from down south. Well, I would plot that route. We would plan that route, including the gas stops, where you're going to stay, what were, stops for food, things along the way that you might want to see if you have the time and such. It's a completely customizable, tailored experience on the motorcycle that we help guide you through the setup. And then once you actually get on the road, once your kickstand's up, you have nothing else to worry about. You just show up and everything is already done for you. So that goes to, like I said, motorcycle rallies, to some of the more memorable rides around the country. Maybe you want to ride the tail of the dragon, but 318 curves in 11 miles is a little intimidating. Well, we'll take you down there and show you how to run it safely, as long as you're not too silly. Or if you want to do a ride out to something like Monument Valley, or Death Valley, and experience some of the hottest climates in the world. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but hey, people do weird things.
A lot of people do it.
One of the things that's on my list that I cannot wait to do, and I've never done it in its entirety, is the Route 66 run from Chicago all the way to California. That's about a 2-week ride that, we would plot, again, all of the stops and such along the way. So the unboundnomad.com, Unbound Nomad on Instagram and pretty much everywhere else. So definitely, please check it out. And if you want to ride with me, I'll be back on the road in just a few months, I promise.
Even though he just had an accident, he is actually a fantastic rider. It would be safe. I talked to one of my coworkers who she's been on bikes probably since I was in diapers. I told her about your concept, and she thinks that is the coolest thing ever. So yeah, I hope you get this thing going and you get healthy. Now back to jiu-jitsu. This is a jiu-jitsu podcast, so we're gonna get back on the mats. Is there, we're not young, right? We just alluded to we're gray beards at this point. How do you approach training, nutrition, things like that, as now that you're getting older?
Well, the first problem I have is a bit of an addictive personality, especially when it comes to martial arts. I'm an incredibly competitive person. I am a man, and I said earlier, I have a warrior's mentality. There's the first struggle, and the first thing that I had to deal with in that regard was not overtraining. I wanted to come in. I thought I was a fighter. Like I said, I've been training all my life, until I walk in and I meet the mountain of man that is you, and I end up getting smothered on the mat for what seemed like eternity, and you're like, what are you talking about? It's only been a minute. Gasping for breath. You're barely exerting any energy inside control, I'm sure, at the time, And it's like, I went home after those first few classes, and I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? But at the same time, I can't wait to go back,
Yeah.
Because it's just something that pushes you mentally like no other. So I had to really temper the not overtraining. I really had to settle into the concept of listen to your body, which again, I'm a man, I'm stubborn, I'm not very bright, and I feel that little tweak in my shoulder, just walk it off, rub a little dirt on it and get back on the mat, let's go. Well, that catches up with you. I mean, I just turned 45 in March, and it's kept my fingers hurt if I'm gripping too hard after class. There have been times where, we're training arm bars for a week, and by the end of my second day, I'm like, oh man, my elbow is really feeling the pain. Nobody's hurting me. They're not putting any pressure. It's just the constant this over and over again for, the duration of the class. So learning to listen to my body, those two concepts were really important. I faced burnout a couple of times, and I've used work as an excuse, like, oh, I'm too busy. And it was just because I didn't want to go back and get my butt kicked by a 20-year-old girl again. I didn't want to go back and get completely housed by a wrestler that's still in middle school, and I had to really kind of get over the ego. So those things are really the kind of the mental hurdles that I had to get over. And my approach to each was just keep going. I just want to keep going. As miserable as jiu-jitsu is, and I think almost anybody we love the sport, it's miserable. Like, we just had no-gi July in my academy. I wasn't able to participate because of the accident, but it's 100+ degrees in the room before people even get in there, and then you've got the body heat, and it's just gross and miserable. I mean, I've had your sweat in my mouth more times than I'd care to count, quite frankly, and it's just miserable, but I love it. I love it. And so I have to listen to my body because it's a sprint. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Like I have gone through I got my first black belt in Taekwondo. I think it took me 4 years, 4.5 years maybe. But the first time I got into a fight and tried to use my Taekwondo, I was like, what the hell is this? It didn't work. It just didn't work. And so that kind of drove some of my other searches in martial arts. I wanted to find something that would work. And most traditional martial arts just, they're great for discipline, they're great for physical exercise, but they're just not practical, and you can't pressure test them. And I found jiu-jitsu, and I wish that I had my eyes opened much earlier, because it's absolutely fantastic for that physical and mental exercise. But if you wear yourself out, you're never going to last. And frankly, I've got black belts in other martial arts. This is the only one that I've ever actually really wanted. But I also don't feel the need, like I don't need it right now. I don't want it right. God, please don't give it to me right now. But someday I want it. And if I don't listen to my body, if I don't moderate my training, and if I don't leave my ego at home before I even get out of the house and head to the gym every time, I'm never going to make it. And I realize that.
So you brought up a few good points. In fact, number one, Phil is not getting his butt kicked by middle schoolers. Jiu-Jitsu has this thing where we all have this self-deprecation addiction, where we all talk about how much we all suck all the time. Phil is absolutely a game competitor. Now, day one, like many other people that I've grappled with, and I went through the same thing when I was first starting. You gas out in that first class, especially a big dude. If you're not coming in super, I wasn't super fit when I started. I had kind of gone through I'll call it a fattening season. But a lot of people tap to gas in those first few rolls because you don't know what the hell you're doing, and it's all this energy that you're expending. And actually, Robin Giesler said, we were talking about what a good workout jiu-jitsu is one day, and he actually said something that stuck with me is the longer I train, the harder it is for me to get a good workout in jiu-jitsu. And that's because he's efficient. He knows when to use energy, when not to use energy. And so that's something I'm trying to emulate, because frankly, if you are wrestling a gorilla, you get to stop when the gorilla is tired, not when you're tired. So you have to pace yourself where you can roll.
Well, I think you and I have both kind of experienced a little bit of that, and we're relatively early on in our progression into jiu-jitsu, but we've talked about this a little bit to where like, oh, now I'm finally able to actually slow down. Like even when I'm outmatched, even when I'm rolling with a dude that's that's going to crush me, I'm able to make good frames. I know where to find good breathing room. I know how to manage weight. I'm a big guy. I'm strong, so I can use that stuff to my advantage. And even though I'm getting my butt kicked and tapping 3 or 4 times in the round to that upper belt, I'm ready to roll the next round after. I've managed my energy, and I'm not, I flash back to my first few classes, and it's like I'm hanging on for dear life. Trying to get a grip on absolutely anything I possibly can because I don't want to get choked, and then you choke me anyway.
Well, we've had, especially me and you, I think we've talked about flow rolling a bunch, and flow roll starts until one guy gets a grip that the other one doesn't want somebody else to have. It ain't happening.
Sorry.
We are turning up the volume, and we are just fucking going at it.
And I won't even say that that's the ego, but that's like the competitive part. That's that warrior spirit where like, yes, I'm here to train, but damn it, I don't want to lose. And I get it. Like, especially so in the white belt era, right? My white belt time was all, I just don't want to die. I want to die as few times as possible. I want to tap as little as possible. I want to make that other person struggle as much and frustrate them as much as I can in those 5-minute rounds. But now that I've gotten into the blue belt and I've got a basic understanding of the skills, I'm starting to learn like how to moderate, when to be strong, when to be fast, when to relax and such. And it absolutely is, a progression that I think as we progress, I mean, you'll get your next belt before I, no doubt, but as we progress up the ranks, you'll just naturally, you get better at the sport and it becomes more natural. I mean, you look at our professors and they've been doing it for 100 years, and it's just, I'll never forget getting beaten by a black belt with his eyes closed. Wouldn't open his eyes, and he was chewing gum the whole time. And it was, aside from the 20-year-old girl purple belt that beat the crap out of me, that was one of the most humbling and yet frustrating experiences, because again, I was like, man, if I saw that guy in a bar and he was talking shit, I could take it. I could totally take it. I should have been able to, holy God, I can't take it. What is he doing? Why can I not breathe? I'm dead.
Think about, I mean, we got some folks. Greg Frangos grabbed my lapel one day. At the very beginning, it was like the first 2 seconds of the roll we started in closed guard. He took my lapel and he said, "That's mine now." And then he proceeded to kick my ass without giving up that lapel for the entire round. I could not break that grip off, and he just wrecked me with that grip whole round. Every position we were in, he still had it. And then you got other guys. We've got, there are black belts that are, smaller. Johnny Kim and Matt Davis and some of these guys, smaller stature. And actually in Idaho, there are a whole bunch of guys that are bantamweight 135ers that, if you see them on the street, you're, oh yeah, that's a little guy. Subtract their cauliflower ear, you would have no idea that they would just absolutely wreck you. So we talked a little bit about like kind of those first time, roles, and as you were getting going, what advice would you give somebody that is older, let's say our age or even older. So if you're in your 40s or 50s and you're thinking about starting jiu-jitsu, what advice would you give that person who has not yet walked through the door but they're thinking about it?
Stop thinking about it. Just go. I hear a lot of folks say, well, I just need to lose a few pounds. I just need to get in shape. I just need this. I just need that. I just need time. Just go. That is one of, again, the hardest things for me. My first few classes with jiu-jitsu, I'm like, man, this is tough. I might not stick with it. But then I was compelled. I want to make myself better. It works. It's effective. And you just have to go. Don't make excuses, but go. If you're worried about losing weight, go. I've lost almost 50 pounds since I started training jiu-jitsu. If you're worried about getting your cardio in shape, just go. I have seen long-distance runners come in and be absolutely gassed in their first minute and a half of a roll because you might be in shape for your sport. You might be a CrossFit guru. You're going to gas out on the mats. It's not jiu-jitsu. It's just not the same. And I would assert that if you take an ADCC champion and put them on the football field, they're going to get wrecked, right? Because it's just a different world. But that's the solid advice, is just go. Stop making the excuses. You're not too old. You're not too heavy. You're not too slow. You're not too out of shape. Just go. And if you keep going, those things that you're worried about are going to get better. And on top of that, you're likely to find a community. If you find a good gym that doesn't, I call them like just an MMA warehouse, right? Like where you go in and you're a bait dog, that you aren't getting taught much. You just get fed to the folks that are heavy, high level competition fighters. You just get beat up, right? You're just chum for the sharks. If you stay away from gyms like that and find those that have good core values like you and I have been lucky enough to find, you're going to find a community. You're going to find the things that you worry about dissolving. You're going to get thinner. You're going to get better in more shape. You're going to find that while that first minute might have killed you in the first 6 months, now you're able to roll 5-minute rounds. Now you're able to roll a couple of rounds. Heck, the last time I was at a pressure test, I sat through the entire thing and only took like 2 breaks over the 2 or 2.5 hours, whatever it was, that we were rolling. So you just got to go.
Yeah, amen. I think every gym has its flavor. So when you're considering gyms, if you're in your 40s or 50s and you're not coming from an MMA background and those things, I think you're dead on. That maybe the MMA competition gym might not be the perfect fit for you if you have other options as far as gyms go. But I can tell you, having been in, I've trained around the country, SBG, Idaho. I'll talk about them a lot because I love them there. When I was really kind of starting to learn to be serious about jiu-jitsu, I was in that gym, and the only class that I could go to was their advanced. It was a competition class uh, at noon on several days of the week, and so I was going in there and absolutely getting wrecked. Every round, every minute of every round, it was just, I was chum for the Sharks, is how it felt. Now, eventually, a new guy came and walked through that door, and I paired up with him, and I was like, oh, my stuff's working. So if you're at a gym where there's not like a fundamental, a fundamentals curriculum or a fundamentals class per se, and it's all just mixed level or advanced, and you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, you are getting better, right? You and I have we've talked about this a lot, right? So you're on this path of improvement where you don't see your improvement. You have these invisible gains where you're like, man, I am not getting better, because while you're training, you're getting better alongside everybody else you're training with. I mean, our group, Phil, we had, there's 4 or 5 of us that kind of all clicked together, similar weight class and experience, and every one of us sort of have been going up this roller coaster hill where I think individually every single one of us has at some point or another said, I'm not getting any better. I'm not getting any better. You're getting better and I'm not getting better. And that is just that's the invisible jiu-jitsu. We're all improving at the same time. Go roll with a new guy. I'm not saying go jack the new guy. I'm saying go roll with somebody that hasn't seen your game as much, maybe is less experienced, and you're going to see, oh yeah, I'm getting it. Like, this is working.
Yeah,
Do you agree?
me today, even with this clubbed foot, I would totally work day one me out. Like there's just no competition to who I was when I first started this. And I absolutely do agree. We talk about the peaks and valleys, and I think that's across the entire jiu-jitsu community. That's not unique to our conversations or our gyms or any of that. It's really a lot of folks that I've heard in the industry go through this, where you progress for a while and you maybe even decline. Life gets in the way. You get run over by a truck and have to sit out for a few months or something, and can't train. And that might decline your skills. And then you get back and you kind of improve back to where you were. And then all of a sudden you hit that plateau. And none of us are ready for the mental tax that comes with that plateau. You're so frustrated because, like you said, you're training along with your friends, and we were running on that inclined parallel for so long, but then I hit a plateau and you keep going, and I'm like, well, what the hell's happening? None of my stuff is working. Everything that I try fails. I forgot how to manage weight. I can't even make a base anymore. I don't know what to do with my hands. It's all of these things, right?
Or we take a private so that we can figure out how to beat Jared. Um,
And that's a whole thing too, right? We get to those points where I'm losing consistently, so we have our little clique. I'll go have a private on how can I beat this guy. You'll have a private on how to beat my turtle. I'll have a private on how to beat, Jeremy Smash Pass or something. And it's like we've got all of these things that we're trying to work on. And again, our friends might be inclining, but we hit that plateau. Nothing seems to work. But I've been doing this for a few years now, and I also don't think that this is unique. I'm not special. I didn't invent this, but I also think that those plateaus lead to more a steeper incline at your next growth, right? Like things aren't working, but keep showing up, keep going. Don't let that be the reason that you're like, screw it, I'm going to go take karate because it's easy, right? Keep going, and then one day it's going to work again.
yeah.
And you may even have to pick on that trial class guy. You might not have to totally beat the tar out of him, but remember how to do a scissor sweep. Remember how to do the basics. Figure out what to do with your hands. Where do my grips go, And, oh yeah, that stuff actually does work. I just have to slow down and pay attention to the details instead of thinking that it's just wax on, wax off. It's not that simple.
Yeah. So I came to a Chitwood Open mat last month, and a couple of people mentioned to me that I seemed like I'm a different roller or a different person rolling after I'd only been gone like a month. And I think that, you guys were working on one thing, I was working on another, and so I probably did roll a little bit different. But it got brought up multiple times that it was an unfamiliar role with somebody that they've trained with me for years.
Well, just so you know, that was said to others. Like that kind of whisper has made it around to me too. I've heard from a couple people as well that they had seen you and that you are definitely tougher and have an improved game since you left. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to rolling
Yeah.
with you again. I can't wait to get back on the mat.
Dude, it's gonna be great. And I still plan on. By the way, listeners, I am what they call a creonch. I switched gyms a few months ago for a few reasons, but primarily, there was some distance, and it was something that I had to think long and hard about. I've thought about it for probably a couple of years, and changing gyms is one of those cultural things in jiu-jitsu that for a long time was almost like a cultish no-no. Now, I the primary reason I didn't change is because of the friendships that I have at Chitwood. Now, you leave and you change gyms, but don't burn bridges. And what that's allowed me to do is I'll go and hit an open mat. I still have good relationships with the people in my old gym, and I've got great relationships in my new gym. And so I do plan on, I want you guys to come to our open mats, and I want to go to your open mats, and we all train together. And if anything, hopefully it does become much different roles as we work on different things, because I'm going to learn some things that maybe you haven't seen. You're going to learn some things that I haven't seen, and then we can share those ideas. I talk about this a little bit at work with the people that I work with that are on my team. I will not tolerate people that want to hoard knowledge and not allow other people on their team to learn that knowledge base because they're worried about somebody else gaining a skill, that they somehow think would mess with their job security. That's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. If you're hoarding knowledge and you're not sharing that knowledge with the people you're training with, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because you want your training partners to be as good as you are, right?
Right. Yeah.
New guy to learn and keep coming back so that they can become a viable, challenging training partner.
Well, it makes us both better, right? Like you teach me something that makes me better, and now I'm able to pull it off, and you have to figure out a way around it. We've gone through that cycle several times together, and I've done it with other training partners, and that's one of the best things about the sport, in my opinion, is like it does no good to think there's secret sauce. We're just rolling around sweaty on the mats. There's no secret to this. It's just make sure that you're doing the details, make sure that you know the movement, make sure that you understand the timing and the weight distribution and such, right? It's silly to try to gatekeep any of that stuff. Fortunately, I haven't seen a whole lot of that in my experience.
Yeah. And I'm grateful that doesn't seem to be the case very often. I do have that little inkling in the back of my mind when I'm teaching somebody how to beat my best stuff. But it is what it is. I guess I got to learn some new magic. Because if I don't show them, somebody else is going to show them. They'll reach out and say, how do I do that?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things. Like every once in a while, you'll get something that's working. And I'll show you eventually, but today is not the day. Like I want to get a little bit of use out of this before I retire it or have to move on to something else. But that doesn't stop you from, you go and ask the professor, hey, how would you get around this? I've had several opportunities to do that where, like you're talking different style, different perspective. That's not just between gyms, but individuals. Like we all see the world so differently. So one of my favorite things to do in those regards is, being a bigger guy, I'll go find one of our smaller black belts and ask, how would you approach this? And that usually really gets me some interesting insight for, it might not be exactly what I need, but it gives me some tools to improve my game a little bit. So next time I've got some surprises for you.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's fantastic. So we are at a spot where we can either wrap this up or we can keep going. Do you have any other tidbits that you want to make sure that you get out to folks?
No, I think this was fun. I think it's a pretty decent spot. I mean, if they have any other questions that we haven't covered, we could certainly do that. But I think we've covered most of what little value I can bring.
I think we all have value. That's why I'm doing it this way. I could restrict it to just black belts and brown belts and those things. And I know that collectively, if you don't know anything about, my background or anything, and all you knew about me is I'm a two-stripe blue belt, there could be a collective groan among jiu-jitsu. Oh God, a blue belt with a podcast. That's all we need. But I think collectively we all do bring different perspectives. And so yours is going to be just as valid as somebody else. I'm not teaching technique here. You're not teaching technique here. We're talking about our mindset and how we approach training and how we approach balancing life with jiu-jitsu and why we do it. So I think blue belt or black belt, there's value in your perspective.
I appreciate that. And like you said, it's that self-deprecating bit, right? Like there's a bit of an inferiority complex when it comes to jiu-jitsu, I think, for most folks. And
yeah,
I mean, I feel that, but I'm proud of what I do. I'm proud of who I know. I'm proud of what I train and who I train with. And man, I cannot wait for this leg to be better so I can be back to doing it.
Well, when it's better, I'm coming to the first open mat you can roll in, and we'll get after it. Well, we'll drill, and I won't heel hook you.
Stay away from my legs. We'll be all right.
Yeah.
Don't tickle my feet.
No. I avoid the tickling because I know that's an attack they probably know too. So again, so still rolling BJJ. I'm going to be releasing an episode every week, as much, unless I can't get a guest, I'll even talk to you for an hour. So every week I'll be releasing a new episode. I've got a lot of good guests lined up already. I've got obviously blue belts. I've got black belts. I have folks that are UFC and Bellator veterans. I have people all over the country. So spreading out to Texas and Idaho and Ohio and New York. I've got a good squad of people coming your way. So I'm going to be releasing on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, and so you'll be able to find me. Please take the time, if you enjoyed this content, take the time to leave a review, subscribe to the channel, so that helps other people that may get some value out of the things that we're talking about. Again, thanks, and I'll see you next week.